What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Get Paid for Your Pad. Today is Friday, so it's a episode of STR Conversations where I normally talk with Eric, but Eric couldn't make it today, so I have an amazing replacement, Mr. Anurag Verma, the co-founder and CEO, I think, of PriceLabs, which is dynamic pricing software, of course, that we can use to maximize revenue from our Airbnb listing. So, Anurag, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jasper. Those are big shoes to fill. I hope I live up to it, but we'll try my best.
Hey, just putting the pressure on a little bit here, okay?
Yeah.
No, I'm excited to chat, man. I'm excited to chat. Like, well, obviously we're coming to the end of the year. 2022 has been a very interesting year. We've seen it was 2021 was a record year in not everywhere, but like in a lot of markets, especially in the US. And so I'm curious to chat with you about what you were saying. I know PriceLabs gathers a lot of data. So you have a pretty good idea of what's happening in the markets. So we're going to do like an update on like what happens in 2022, especially in the US market, and what are some expectations for 2023 as well. So let me ask you this first before we dive into it. Are we completely post-pandemic now, or are we still experiencing some aftershocks?
I think we are probably, if anything, we are seeing like second order shocks from it, in that I don't think I guess China is still in lockdown, but for the rest of the, once in a while, of course, but for the rest of the world, I don't think we are seeing much happening on that front. And even when it happens, people are vaccinated and people have stopped caring about it in some ways. I think at least in the US, right now it's COVID, flu, and RSV, like all kinds of things floating around, and people are like, yeah, what can you do? That's the attitude. When I say second order effects, it's more like 2021 was blockbuster because of the pandemic, because 2022 was so far down. And so 2022, even if it was normal, would look bad. And so you can say that because of the pandemic, people might be feeling 2022 is bad, but it wasn't that bad. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 2021, we saw a huge rebound in many markets, especially like the drive-to destinations, the traditional vacation rental destinations. As you mentioned, in Asia, things are still there's still some challenges. Like I actually have a unit in Thailand and in the Philippines, and those units are still not performing at the level of where they should be. So, but yeah, 2021 was a huge year in most markets in the US. So 2022, I think I would say it was a good year, but it wasn't. Yeah, if you compare it to 2021, what is the data showing? Like, was it a lot less than 2021, or kind of on par?
Yeah, so in terms of market data, and the data has been showing different things for different places, just partly because of how 2021 was in different places, right? So Australia, for example, September and October in 2021 were seriously seeing COVID effects. So like they were very far down, not so much this year. A lot of Europe was still very cautious in 2021. So when you look at a lot of European cities, or markets, they are actually ahead of 2021 in 2022. If you look at US, there are again two parts to it. There is the destinations which were off cities, like more vacation kind of destinations, or not even vacation, like people, lake houses, beaches, mountain homes, and like Smoky Mountains, for example, like that entire region like saw a big boom, and it was a lot of times driven by people working remote, school being in many cases still remote. 2022, like a lot of that just went, like even if people could work remotely, which I mean I do, a lot of people I know work remotely, but their kids still have to go to school, so you can't just like ship to somewhere else and live there. So a lot of that demand has sort of reduced a lot. So we are seeing cities in US, big cities in US actually perform better than 2021, but more of the destinations outside of cities have become a little worse. They're still better than what they used to be like 3 years back, but then or pre-pandemic. But they compared to 2021, a lot of people got into short-term rentals in 2021. So to them, it might be seeming like what just happened. Like, why is this so bad? But this is normal. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, that's what we see in our market in Ottawa. Like, the amount of Airbnbs in our market has grown a lot. You know, in 2021, 2022. So I think that's what a lot of people are seeing in similar type of markets, like the like the traditional vacation rental markets, the kind of drive to destinations in nature, as you mentioned, beaches, mountains. There's a lot of supply hit the market, and so that has put some pressure on occupancy and ADRs. What I see in our student groups, the markets that I feel like have performed the best in 2022 are actually the secondary cities. You know, cities like Kansas or Nashville, like those type of cities. Is that something you see as well?
I actually, when I looked at it, it almost seemed that the really big cities saw a bump compared to 2021, mostly because the really big cities are a lot of times driven by business travel as well. And business travel wasn't happening much in 2021, and then it bounced back in 2022. At least when I looked at it, the tier 2 cities, I don't know if I should call them tier 2, but like I looked at, for example, Columbus, Nashville, like a lot of cities like that. I felt actually went down a little bit. I didn't look at Kansas City. So like I would want to see, like I looked at cities which are tier 2, but also still very much, like touristy. I don't think Kansas City is as touristy as Nashville is. So like I would want to see, like, hey, maybe business travel is propping it up or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, what I don't look at the, like, you have all the data, right? I'm just hearing anecdotal stories from students, right? So that's
if you hear enough anecdotal stories, now you have data.
Exactly. So that's interesting. So the bigger cities, like we're talking New York, Los Angeles, like those cities have performed relatively well in 2022, but that's mostly because 2021, those are the markets that didn't recover as quickly, right? So that makes sense. So as a whole, 2022 versus 2021, did we see, if we take the whole of the US, did we see a drop? Was it constant, or did we see some growth?
I did not see the numbers for US as a whole, but from whatever I have been hearing, the general occupancy has come down a little bit compared to 2021, and that still doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just that, I mean, it had to come down, and anytime occupancy comes down, RevPAR generally tends to also come down, because people then adjust their rates down compared to what they would have if occupancy had stayed strong, for example. One thing I did notice when I was looking at a lot of data was, and this was, I actually looked at worldwide, is length of stay continued to fall down. Like 2020 was sort of peak of long lengths, stay lengths. 2021 saw a dip, and then 2022 again saw a dip. So like pointing back to the same thing, that people who were transplanting themselves to a different city and go work from there and do school from there for a month or 2 months, they are potentially not doing it as much anymore.
Right, because the kids have to go to school, so they don't have that flexibility that they had in 2020.
Exactly.
And by the way, can you explain what RevPAR means, just for the people that aren't familiar with that term?
So RevPAR is very so anytime you think about, if you only have one property, let's say, RevPAR, the definition is revenue per available. For us, it's a rental, and rental night, you can almost say. So suppose you have 30 days in November and you made $900, just as an example, in rental revenue that month. your RevPAR is 900 by 30, which is 30. If you made $1,800 in that month, your RevPAR is 1,800 by 30, which is 60. So seems like a very straightforward calculation. Why should I worry about this? The reason to worry about it is twofold. One, there are times, especially in our industry, when out of those 30 nights in November, maybe for some reason you're not able to sell 5 nights. Let's say you had, or 10 nights. Let's say you had some maintenance work going on. You only had 20 nights to sell, and you say you made $1,800 in those 20 nights. That means your RevPAR was not 60, it was 90. So in terms of performance, you would say this property performed really well, given that there were only 20 nights available to be sold. So it helps to sort of benchmark different properties, because not everything is available all 30 days to sell in a month.
Yeah.
So one is that.
Right.
Second one, as you scale, this becomes even more important, because a lot of times the way to measure performance is looking at year over year. Like there is so much seasonality, it's not right to compare November to October, but it is okay to compare November to last November. And say last November you were managing 5 units and you made $10,000 in November, and this year you were managing 10 units and you made $18,000. How do you compare? If you look at revenue, of course you did great. Like you bumped up by 80%. But from a pricing and revenue management perspective, it would say that per unit per night, you actually dropped. So if you purely looked at per unit, earlier you were making 2,000. This time you made 1,800. So your performance dropped. But then maybe there is more to it. Maybe this year a lot of maintenance was going on, so units were not available. And so you should account for that. So this is where RevPAR becomes helpful to say, being able to compare on average on a night that could have been booked, how much did I make? So it's helpful to always have that as a metric, because a lot of times you think of occupancy as a metric or ADR as a metric, and the multiplication of those two is what really matters.
That makes a lot of sense. So RevPAR, so revenue per available night, per available room, is really like the metric that's being used the most, I would say, like in the hotel industry too, right? To compare apples to apples, because as you mentioned, like we can look at revenue, but then let's say we have an owner stay, we stay at our own unit for 2 weeks or something during a certain month, and it's like, the revenue went down, but actually the RevPAR might actually have gone up.
Still happening up,
right. Exactly. So it's so for everybody out there who wants to really like analyze the numbers, that's probably the best number to look at, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is again, it's something that came out of the hotels, and which is why most commonly people say RevPAR, and you said per room, which is because in hotels you have rooms. For vacation rental industry, a lot of people call it RevPAN, per available night. So you might have a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, doesn't matter, as long as you're comparing 2 bedrooms to other 2 bedrooms year over year. You look at per available night, how much did you make? So it's a fairly standard thing in the industry, especially if you talk to people who are more into pricing and revenue management, to say, okay, this is the right way to think about it.
If you're talking to somebody and kind of want to impress them, and then RevPAR is a cool thing to throw out.
It's cool, and it might seem complicated when we are discussing it like that, but if you sit down and try to calculate it for your own rentals, it's not really that complicated a thing. It sounds cool. It is pretty simple, and it has a lot of insights. So like generally highly recommend at least keeping track of it. So like pretty much any pricing or revenue management service that you can use probably has that functionality for free, where you can see your own RevPAR month over month and things like that. So you don't even have to calculate it. You can just sign up with one of the services, and we'll show you those kind of dashboards to say, hey, this is what you're performing at.
So one thing that that this year Airbnb came up with a important update, right?
Yeah.
It was last month, I think it was. And one of the updates is the pricing, right? It's like how they're going to show the total price on the Airbnb listing when you search for a property versus the nightly price. Do you think that has a big impact on how people search, and how does it affect how we should be pricing our units?
I don't think it should be affecting how you price your units per se. Um, Overall, it's a positive change, right? Like, Jasper, you have a lot of experience with Europe, so you probably know this has been in Europe for the longest time. I think European law requires that everything be shown in the price. Like, there should not be, even if you go to the grocery stores there, like if you see $2, you pay $2. You don't pay $2 and tax, right? So the change was essentially because people were complaining a lot about, hey, I see the property is $200 a night. I want to make a booking for 2 nights. I'm expecting to pay 400, and then there's a cleaning fee of 300, and suddenly it becomes 350. If I had been told that it's going to be 350, I would not have looked at that property because that's far out of my budget, right? And so the earlier system was something that you could gain as a host, to where you had a high cleaning fee and low rate. So you show up cheap on the search page, you get somebody to go there, and then they get a sticker shock. The hope when you do this gaming is that whoever lands on your page falls in love with your place after seeing the pictures, but that is hope, right? And maybe there is some amount of that happening, but in a lot of cases, it was just dissatisfaction from guests, right? People were not booking places, and now it's a lot more transparent to say, like, okay, I'm seeing 350, and then there is another property that also had the same nightly rate and is charging a lower cleaning fee. So I can see right there. I don't care whether it's going to cleaning fee or nightly rate as a guest. All I care about is how much do I have to pay, right?
No, totally.
In terms of pricing, what it does is earlier I know some folks who would use cleaning fee as a way to incentivize longer stays. So what they would do is they would keep their rates lower and cleaning fee high to say, look, really, I don't want a 1-night stay. If you want a 1-night stay, it's $500 because 200 nightly rate plus 300 of cleaning fee. But if you're staying for a week or 10 days, then that 300 cleaning fee divided by 10 is like 30 per day, a lot more palatable, right? So people were essentially some people were using cleaning fee as not the true fee that gets paid out to the cleaners, but more as a way to say, I want to incentivize. And if that's your use case, this is actually still okay. You're still not giving anybody sticker shock. You're not trying to say it's 200 and then make it 500. When they search for one, they'll see 500. And if nothing else is available, they'll be like, sure, this is what I get. I'll take it. It's serving your purpose while still not being dishonest. So like I feel it's okay. Like
that strategy is probably going to be more effective now.
Yeah.
Right. Because
exactly.
people can see the total price, so you're probably not going to get those 1-night stays. Versus like before, you might have some people who see the 200 nightly rate and they check it out and they end up still booking it. So I think it's an improvement. I think it makes the platform more friendly, user friendly, which in the end of the day is good for us, right? More people on the platform means more guests, and so I think it's a good thing. Do you think that anything changes with the algorithm, the Airbnb search algorithm?
From what I have read so far, they are going to make sure, like, they're going to rank properties that are priced better as a whole higher, which makes sense. Also, like, even if the Airbnb's default algorithm doesn't change, once you set the filters and you say sort by price, it's going to sort by total price and not based on the nightly price, right? All of which sort of makes sense. Of course things will change. Of course, some folks are going to drop in rankings because of that, but then in the long run, you'll be able to make adjustments to it to say, okay, what do I truly care about? The total amount that I get, and cleaning fee, honestly, in most cases, it makes sense to just have it as a pass on to the cleaners, right? Like, so eventually incentives and advertising and everything else should be so that fees just go directly to the cleaners. And like, as much as Airbnb can do, or any marketplace can do in making that simplified and less gameable, it's a good change.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I don't see a reason not to charge a different cleaning fee than what we're actually paying the cleaners. I think that makes the most sense. And I like the fact that you can't game the system anymore now, where you put a big cleaning fee just to get more visibility for your listing. That trick is just not working anymore. So becomes a fairer game in my opinion.
Yeah. And if the purpose was to say, I don't want one night stays, and so let me do it by having a big cleaning fee. I think the Airbnb also has settings now that say, if it's a one night stay, I want to bump up the price by 50% or something like that, right? So there are other tools available to do those kinds of things without needing to say, cleaning fee is the lever I want to use to. Its purpose is not to change revenue management strategy. It should just be a fee.
Agreed. So let's talk a little bit about 2023, right? Everyone's curious about 2023, right? Because there's a lot of talk about, inflation, and is there a recession coming? And, some hosts are concerned that 2023 is not going to be a great year. Like, is there anything in the data, like, because we already see, obviously the bookings are already coming in for 2023. What can we say about like the pace of the bookings so far?
Yeah. So I want to go one level further out. For 2023, for any year, the biggest season or the biggest time to travel is summer in most of the northern hemisphere, unless you're a ski location. And what we generally see is people hold on till January starts to start booking for the summer. This is like, of course, some people are booking right now, but January first week is when you see the avalanche like really show up. And I don't know what this is. I used to be at United Airlines, and it was the same thing there. Like, it's people know their budgets for different things. If you're a business traveler, you know your budgets a little better, you know your schedule a little better. If you're traveling for leisure, then right now all you're doing is looking forward to like Christmas and New Year holidays. And that's when you sit with your family and say, okay, what should we do for summer? And then when you go back and then you book, right? So right now, very minimal booking activity happens for next summer. And in that minimal booking activity, at least right now, we are seeing that for the next summer, we are pacing behind what we saw in 2022. So like at this time last year, if we were talking in December 2021, we were seeing maybe 3%, 5%, 10% occupancy in a certain market. Right now, in the same markets, we are seeing like 1%, 3%, 5% occupancy. So like people generally are saying, I don't know what's going to happen, how the economy is going to shape up, so I'm going to hold off. And this is true anytime there is uncertainty. Like during COVID times, when there was uncertainty in like, is there going to be lockdown, or are things going to be fine in 2 months? Nobody knew. So what would you do? You basically said, I'm not going to book till I absolutely, not absolutely, but with some certainty, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so we saw a ton of last minute bookings. So our advice generally to everybody has been, make pricing adjustments, for example, for the next month or 2 months. Don't, just because you are used to getting bookings 6 months out for summer and you didn't get it this time, don't start dropping your rates just yet.
Yeah, because those bookings may still come, right? If everyone's kind of holding off because people are worried about the recession, inflation, and I actually saw inflation numbers seem to be on the downward trend right now, right? So it's very possible that a few months into 2023, it it kind of goes away as a topic, and then people suddenly get more confidence, and everyone starts booking again. So, interesting. So right now we're pacing a little bit behind, but nothing too crazy. As you mentioned, don't panic. Don't start lowering your prices quite yet, because you might miss out on revenue then.
And nothing too crazy. I would want to give an answer after the first 2 weeks of January have gone by, because that's where the volume starts showing up, and we'll be able to say that, okay, is the volume showing up this year or not? And again, if it doesn't, that doesn't mean that you go crazy and drop rates a lot. It just means that maybe you can make a few tweaks here and there. You're always hedging, right? So like there is one world in which the economy like there is a recession, and there's one world where things stay fine. And right now, so few people are booking that even if it's slower, you don't need to go drop your rates. As it gets closer, by the time it's March, now maybe you say, hey, the chances of, if it is still slow by March, the chances of it being softer are getting higher and higher. So maybe I should see if I can get some bookings instead of holding off my high rate. So like this far out, no need to panic.
No, that makes sense. Are you seeing any big differences between Europe and the US when it comes to what happened in 2022, but also what we're seeing with the pacing for 2023?
Yeah, so 2022, I can give an answer of like big differences. I think I hinted on it earlier as well, but Europe in 2021 had not, like, at least the first half of 2021, Europe was still very much in like COVID mode. Like people were not traveling freely and things like that. And then the second half recovered after that. But 2022 really, like 2022 summers was, and even 2022, like, I was looking at November and December, stronger than last year, than 2021. US was much quicker in opening up after COVID. So like everything is sort of running a little ahead of its time in the US. So like 2021 was a big year, and now it's normal. So it's possible that Europe sees that kind of a thing where like, okay, 2021 was slow, 2020 was better, and maybe 2023 will be a little slower compared to that, just because 2022 was stronger, right? I haven't looked at pacing specifically for Europe. Most of the pacing information I saw was for US. I can, of course, look at it and send it over if that helps.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I know PriceLabs has a market report functionality that people can use for free, no?
So there are two products on the reporting side. There is a product where you can see your own data and metrics and pacing. And so you can see your own portfolio to say, how am I pacing for 2023 compared to 2022? And that one is for free. All you do is connect your properties to PriceLabs. We charge for dynamic pricing, but if you don't turn on dynamic pricing, you can still access all the internal reporting that you want to, essentially. The market dashboards are, depending on the market, are either $10 a month or $20 a month. You get the first month free when you connect your properties. So if you don't connect your properties, you have to pay $10 or $20 per month, and you can turn it on or off as needed. But if you connect a property, even one property, we basically say, hey, even if you're not using dynamic pricing, go look at this market data. The other cool thing, even if you're not using dynamic pricing, in the dynamic pricing product itself, we only charge if you turn on the sync switch, which basically says, I want PriceLabs to update rates. If you don't turn it on, you can still access all the market neighborhood data for that property for free. So it's no charge. So you can see how summer is booking up and things like that for free anytime. The market dashboards are more like, I don't have a property, I still want to look at the data. you can go ahead and do that. But if you have a property, you can anytime look at market data for free.
That's awesome, man. Is that your gift to the short-term rental industry?
Sure, yeah. Actually, this the pacing stuff that I talked about is something that rolled out earlier this month. So till now, we would show how is the future looking occupancy rate for your different properties, and you could do comparisons year over year, but you couldn't do the pacing comparison. So like this one that we talked about, like right now, say July is far away, but say it's 5% booked. That is helpful, but that doesn't tell me how is it compared to last year, because last year I know eventually it was 90% booked, but how was July last year in December the year before? Like, was it 5%? Was it 10%? If it was 10%, then I know this July is being a little slower right now. So we added that layer on top earlier this month. So, and that's available for free as well. So like if you connect your properties, you can get a lot of these analytics for your portfolio.
Awesome. Are you guys planning to launch anything major in 2023?
Yeah. So 2023, we have 2 or 3, significant improvements to our pricing algorithm itself. So like accounting for a lot more information than we do today, and that's been possible because of a lot of infrastructure changes we have made. In terms of data products, the rollout that we did earlier this month about pacing, there's a lot more of that coming across the product. So like we are also rolling out a few free tools for people to be able to answer broader questions like, hey, how is the entire short-term rental industry in the US doing? How is it pacing? So we are rolling it out as a free tool because, well, like, a free tool that you don't even have to create a login for, to say, if you want to find out how is summer in my state, and it will be at a state level. I think if you want to get down at a city or a micro market level, then you create an account and look at it. But we want to create these tools to be available so that anybody can come and see how's your overall market feeling, essentially.
Awesome. Yeah. Sweet, dude. Well, I appreciate you coming on and giving us some updates here, and sharing some data. Obviously, we all hope that 2023 is going to be an amazing year for short-term rentals. I'm still pretty positive. I feel like there's always like ups and downs, but as a general trend, I feel like the short-term rental industry, we're still moving. The trend is still our friend. I think
exactly.
So
it's growing so much. It has grown so much from pre-pandemic. Like a lot of things that people talked about during the pandemic, right? These were speculations at this point, that because people don't want to stay in hotels, people will come to short-term rentals, and a lot of people had their first short-term rental stay after COVID. All of that is still true. Like it's generally, even though we think 2022 is a softer year, it's still beating 2019, which even with all the supply growth that we have seen and uncertainty in the financial markets and things like that, the tailwind is still behind us.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I see 2 books on the shelf behind you, and I want to make sure that a third one gets added up there very soon. So this is a book a bunch of us co-authored, and it's essentially it's about direct bookings. So we have spoken a lot about Airbnb in this call, and how your ranking can change on Airbnb depending on algorithms and things like that. So the thought is that Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, these are all very important channels. This is how guests find you. But in addition, to create some amount of independence, it's also important to have your own direct booking channels. And of course, you don't have, if I create a website and say, here, come book a direct stay with me, there are a few downsides, right? One is, how do I get anybody to come to my website? Like, people know about Airbnb, people don't know about Anurag's home on Lake Michigan, right? Like, how do they come to my website and book it here? second is, even if they get to the website, how do they then know that this is legit? Airbnb has reviews, Verbo has reviews, Booking.com has reviews. There's a system going on. So there is a place for all the OTAs, but then this is about, okay, how do I make those two things happen? And then once somebody has established some trust in this, making sure that from a pricing perspective and profitability perspective, it makes sense. So our chapter is about that, to say, once you have, like, a lot of other chapters are about how to get people to come to your website, how to get them to trust your website. And then our chapter is about how do you price it, keep prices in sync with the OTAs, and how to make sure you're still running it profitably and you're not giving away. It shouldn't be that you do this and you're making less money that you would have by doing it directly with Airbnb or Booking.com.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, those kinds of things.
Yeah. I noticed that, like, a lot of people charge a little bit less on the direct booking website, and they use that as giving people an incentive to book direct versus through one of the OTAs. I've noticed that we get questions sometimes from our guests, on Airbnb. They book with us, and then they find our website, and then they're like, hey, I noticed on your website the price is different. But it's often confusing because we use a pricing algorithm as well, right? So, like, the prices change anyway every single day. So it's hard to explain that to the guests, where it's like, the price depends on the day, and it changes every day. And from the guest perspective, the guest just thinks, oh, one property has one price, right?
Yeah,
and then they get confused about it sometimes. So sometimes I'm struggling, like, how am I going to explain this, right? Without the guest thinking like, oh, I'm getting a bad deal or something.
Yeah, and honestly, there is one thing to say. Suppose an OTA charges 15% commissions. You can say, I can have my prices to be 15% lower because nobody's charging me a commission. But you also have to think about, to maintain this website, to have a separate workflow when somebody books through that website. It is effort. It's not costless. So you shouldn't, like, give that commission away. Like, think of it as an expense as well. That it's a website. The website is not for free. Like, you're still paying something somewhere.
Marketing expenses before, for example.
Exactly. Yeah. So with all of that, it's important to, like, have all of these considerations. So, like, I would self-promote myself and say,
shameless plug.
Yes, shameless plug. It's on Amazon. So if anybody wants to take a look.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, thanks for jumping on here, and I'm sure we'll connect again in 2023 at some point.
Yeah.
And
I'll be happy to send over some of those data tools that we are building, so that we can. A lot of questions you asked will be very easily answerable by anybody if they look at those.
Awesome.
I'll be sure.
Yeah, if you send those over, and then I'll share it in a few weeks in January in the new year.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's when the bookings start happening, anyways.
That's right. Yeah. All right, Anurag, thanks so much.
Right.
And to the listeners, thank you for listening. Of course, we'll be back on Monday with another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. Enjoy the holidays, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, Jasper.